Kom igjen, gutter. Klokka 9 nå. I'm working on my... Jeg forstår litt norsk. Og snakker litt. Jeg heter Roy Osherove. Osherove, I guess I should say. Good morning. Those of you who made it through a tough night, I'm guessing. How many of you are team leaders, lead other people right now? Okay, so I'm guessing about 43%, something like that. Okay, how many of you will be team leaders at some point? Raise your hands, okay. 12%. And the rest are just marketing people, I'm guessing? Or the rest are just buffet people, I'm guessing, actually. Yeah. So I'm actually moving to Norway in August with my whole family, 3 kids and everything. So found a nice place to work. It's called, what was it called? Bouvet something. I always thought it's an island, but I guess I was wrong. I told my wife we're going to an island. She said, awesome. A lot of the information you're going to hear in this talk is completely new, or it has been refurbished to make better sense of things that I've been working on for the past few years. You can find a lot of it at 5wise.com. You can hear me whine on Twitter about team leadership today and test-driven development and a lot of other things. And hopefully from September, you'll be able to actually get a much easier hold of me whenever you need it. So first of all, why do we need a team leader manifesto? We already have an agile manifesto that says that things should be awesome, right? We prefer this over that. And for the 10 years where the agile manifesto has been alive, a lot of us have been trying, really trying, to get it working where we work. A lot of us have also failed miserably to do it for a million reasons. I think that one of the reasons why we cannot get agile adoption to work is the missing link between the values that we want our company to have and our actual actions in the teams where we are. We don't have to be team leaders or officially team leaders to make a difference. But this talk is specifically for those who have been appointed team leaders in a technical sense, in any sense. So a team leader is anyone who has a leadership capability. For example, an architect is also an example of a leader. An architect is someone who defines paths of how people might want to work. Someone who's supposed to set an example who people have to follow. So an architect has the same responsibilities as a team leader. But specifically team leaders, which are not architects, a lot of times they didn't even choose to be team leaders. A lot of times they've been just appointed team leaders when their time has come. I heard a story just this morning about great intentions gone wrong, and I think we've all been there. Has anyone ever had a team leader that could have been much better as a team leader? Okay, great. Is anyone here that leader? I don't expect you to raise your hands. But I've had several team leaders that could have been so much better. And I know that I myself as a team leader could have made so many mistakes. But here's an example. A developer forgets to do something in their code. They check in crappy code. Okay? Team leader really cares about quality, wants to do something about it, wants to raise the quality. So how do you make these great intentions go horribly wrong? You announce in the team meeting how that developer has made that horrible mistake without even letting him know first that you're going to do it. And so that developer will never want to work with you ever again. Although your intentions are completely awesome, right? You care about quality. And a lot of us, we care about those things we want to do. We care about test-driven development. We care about small iterations, maybe no iterations, doing the Kanban thing. We care about teams that gel, that work together. We care about delivery, about automation. Yet somehow we get stuck in this world where something just happens. And a lot of times we just can't define what is the difference between what we have in our heads and what's actually happening in reality. And this is the missing link, I think, is that as team leaders, a lot of times we're missing those core principles of how to act and what we're supposed to do. We lack purpose. What is the purpose of a team leader? If you ask every team leader will tell you something a little bit different. What is the role of a team leader? What's the point? A lot of team leaders don't know what their purpose is. I guess until a few years ago, I didn't know what my purpose was. I thought I did, but it kept changing. I thought my purpose was just to get software ready on time. I thought my purpose was to negotiate timetables and schedules, or to translate product into technical information. But how did I know if I was doing okay? A lot of team leaders have no idea how to measure whether they're doing good work or not. Yes, you can say we can measure something by our deliveries, only by the output that we have at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, or at the end of the duration. But is that truly the only way we're being measured? Can you have a team that produces releases with quality and everything, and yet still the team will be unhappy? An unhappy team is a team that will be less productive over time. Are we doing the right thing? If we know our purpose, we can dictate what is the right thing to do at a specific time, because we know where we're aiming. We have a goal. We know where we're trying to reach. If my goal is just to keep the status quo, because that's where I've been put in, then I don't have anything to say about what my goal is. The right thing to do. A lot of people, since they didn't ask for this, they just got appointed, they have no idea what that means. So they just go for the default operation. Default is just keep the status quo going. Someone just put me in charge of my team. Okay, let's just make sure that there is no smoke coming out of the machines. Let's just make sure no one is trying to kill themselves at the team. Let's just make sure that the releases are kind of okay, that we keep just putting out the fires. If my goal is just supervising putting out fires, then what's the purpose of this? Is the purpose just to run a room full of machines that fix fires? I'm going to have a team that at some point is not going to be happy. And you know, they say that people don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers. And every time I've had that experience, it was always about the person right above who was directly responsible for the way I felt. So we stay in our comfort zones. A lot of times as team leaders, the default state is to do what we do best. How did we become team leaders in the first place? Because we were good as programmers. So we continue to do what we do best. We focus on that thing we used to do. And so we try to focus more on the technical aspect instead of the people aspects. But why would we want to focus on the people aspect at all? What's the point? After all, aren't I just a programmer who's supposed to supervise putting out fires? If we look at it like that, we come into a world, a very, very dark world. Someone once said that if you treat people like screws in a big machine, that's what you're gonna end up with. All the people who don't want to be treated like that will just leave, and you're gonna be left with all the people who just want to do the default, the most minimum stuff, just to be able to finish the day and go home, with nobody being unhappy with their work. And so we have this big layer of middle management throughout the world. In almost any company, in any project, we have this layer of middle management who has almost no training on how to do what it is that we're supposed to do. They don't know what it was that we're supposed to do. They just went up the ladder. And so this middle management really becomes puppet management. because they have no purpose, because they don't know what they're supposed to do, they're very easily moved or pushed around to the wills and wants of anyone else in the company, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do. And so great teams can be destroyed by having a leader that does not have the ability to set a specific goal and stand up for it. But we need to have a goal. And that's where the Team Leader Manifesto comes in. Because I think that as team leaders, we need to have that. Almost like the Socratic oath of doctors, although not as important. We just make the machines that doctors use so that we can kill people only at batches. So we might want to have an oath as well. But it's not about TDD. It's not about quality. Yes, ultimately it might be. But what is the goal that a team leader should aim for? This is the full text. We're going to go through this line by line of just a draft of a manifesto that I'm working on. This is version 4. I'm not going to read this whole thing out loud because we're going to go through it. But it starts with, we believe that great teams are grown, not hired. Think about it. As team leaders, a lot of times we feel like we're the victims of the situation. If you've ever said, if only I had a better team, I could have done so much better, right? I just went to a TDD course, and I would love to really do test-driven development. But if only, I had the better team, I could actually do it. But I don't. So maybe next time. And so they just accept the situation of having a specific team with a specific set of skills, and they just accept failure. But the truth is that as team leaders, this is your job. Your job is to actually change the team that you have, to grow them. Your job is to grow the team to become the team that you want them to be. It's a very tough job. There is a sentence by Jerry Weinberg saying, management done right is a very tough job. Think about it. Management done right is a very tough job. That's why you get paid more, because it's a tough job. But a lot of managers like to take the money and not do all the tough parts, okay? Like actually talking to people face to face, like changing the behavior of people into workplace, finding the influence patterns that actually make it work. And it could be for a lot of different reasons, but a lot of it is about comfort zones. I'm not comfortable talking to people, I'm comfortable talking to machines. That's why I became a team leader, because I was really good at machines. And so there's a paradox there. So if our goal is to grow the team, if that's one of our main goals, then we can start thinking about how we achieve that. How do you grow teams? Now, it sounds like it's almost far-fetched. Why is the goal of a team leader to grow their team? Well, the truth is that the more you grow your team, the more the skills that they have to solve their own problems, the happier they are. Because developers, I don't know if you know this, some of you might actually be developers, like to be challenged, like to rise to new heights, to new abilities. If you think back on your best managers, I bet that a lot of you will remember that person who challenged you or allowed you to achieve new things that you've never done before. A person that allowed you to experience something that might have been risky, but then you came out a different person because of that, or a much more valuable or skilled person. So that kind of growth creates teams that are actually that actually want to be with you, that actually want to be in that group. They don't just have to be because that's what they're paid for. They want to be there because being there makes them better. It makes them feel great. It makes you feel great because you're going to be on that growth path as well. So the goal of a team leader is to continuously grow their team, the skills of the people in the team, to the point of self-organization. Now we're getting somewhere. Self-organization. What is self-organization? Self-organization is people able to solve their own problems. Okay? What is a self-organizing team? When people say scrum, etc., and they say, oh, just lock the people in the room for 2 weeks and then go back after 2 weeks and you'll have something. That's supposed to be self-organization. So they don't need you to finish what it is that they need to finish. That's why people create feature teams, so they don't have to go outside the team to solve a problem related to the database or anything like that. But there are bigger issues with self-organization than just having all the correct roles in a specific team. For example, imagine that you're with a team of people who have never worked together before, that have little information about the technology they're supposed to work with, but you're working in an agile fashion. So you gather those 5 poor people, you say, you're going to work together, and I'm going to leave you alone for 2 weeks. Here's what you have to do. See ya. Okay, so now you have these 5 people in the room, and it's almost like a reality show. Okay, if you put a camera there, you're going to see all that anxiety and people actually having no idea what to do. Not all people possess the current skills to just solve all their own problems. What's a problem? It could be as simple as our machines are not fast enough to actually compile the thing and be able to deliver at the same time. Okay? Has anyone ever had a problem with a slow machine? Okay. What did you do when you had a slow machine? Can anyone tell me? I can't hear you. Surfing the internet. Okay, thank you. The buffet person. Hey, great publicity. Anyone else? What did you do when you had a slow machine? Sorry? Swear. Okay. How did you solve that problem? Sorry? Reorganize the code. Interesting. Delete all the code, and so the machine doesn't need to compile anything. Okay, has anyone ever turned to their manager and said, I need a faster machine? Raise your hand if you ever did that. Okay, that means that you couldn't solve your own problem. That's the simplest example of solving your own problem. So what is a self-organizing team? A self-organizing team is a team that can get around problems because development is basically solving a set of problems. We want them to self-organize. It means we need to give them all the skills to solve any problems they come across. So in essence, by me creating a self-organizing team, I'm making myself almost unnecessary. Think about it. If the team has to come to me every time they have a problem, like the simplest thing, like a slow machine, or which architecture should we choose, or which API is better, or what does the customer think of this, all these are problems that need to be solved. If I am the go-to person, that I am a bottleneck in the team. If I'm away for a couple of days because I'm sick, the team is stuck. It's not a self-organizing team if the team leader is away and the team cannot do its work. A self-organizing team knows how to solve these problems on its own. And that's one of the points that a lot of people don't get. And that's one of the points why a lot of agile teams are not really agile. It's because they don't have the skills to self-organize. They're in a whole different universe. They're in that universe where you actually keep putting out fires. You never have time to learn TDD even. What do you do about that? But that's our goal. And if we get that goal, if we continually improve people's skills and get them to learn new skills, they will be happier. I will be happier. So I keep asking that question every week as a team leader. Is each person in my team better or has a new skill that they didn't have last week? That's how I measure myself as a team leader. As a team leader, I measure myself by the growth of the team. So if the growth of the team is a flat line, I'm not doing my job. That's how I measure myself. Because if I continually do that, I continually make the team more and more self-organizing. I continually make them learn new skills so they're happier. And I continually make myself obsolete as a bottleneck. And then I can focus on the things that are really important. Coaching people, okay, pair programming, mentoring, growing the next team leader, coding as well. I want to be part of the code. A lot of team leaders don't have the time to code because they're so busy in meetings and solving everyone's problems that they never have time to code. But you can have time to code as a team leader. You should have time to code as a team leader, or you're out of touch with the team. You're out of touch with the quality of the team. If you see a piece of line of code once a month, then you're not in touch with the actual what's going on in the team. How do you do that? You teach people to solve their own problems, and suddenly you have more time to do the more important things. Now, of course, a lot of teams will have a problem with that. Because as a team leader, when I just started out, I remember I was the perfect shielding team leader. People would come to me with anything. Sometimes I would just write the code for them. Yeah, just do this. Here's an infrastructure you can use. And people said, we love you. You're the greatest team leader we've ever had. That only happened once, by the way. And that project failed. However, I didn't do my job as a team leader because the people in the team never grew new skills. I didn't challenge them. I didn't ask them to solve their own problems. Yes, I did teach them test-driven development, so they kind of learned a new skill, but I didn't challenge them to solve other problems. They just learned one new skill through an 8-month project. It doesn't mean anything. It's very, very slow progress. So to achieve the goal of getting teams to self-organize, another thing we want to do is to challenge ourselves and our teams instead of keeping everyone in their comfort zone. Real growth comes when we let go of some things that we already know and we push ourselves into something that we feel completely, or not completely, but definitely afraid of. Okay? When you learn a new language and you join a company where you don't know the new language or just very partially, that's a very scary thing to do, but you're going to end up with a very powerful skill or more skills than you did. So you end up with being a different person than you were because you're looking at things with a better perspective of someone who knows 2 languages. You're a much better programmer if you know more than a single language. When you become a team leader, you can choose to become a team leader who makes a difference, or you can choose to become a team leader who is in their comfort zone and doesn't make a difference. If you're in the comfort zone, you're not going to learn anything new about leading people. You might learn a lot about working with Excel. You might learn a lot about Microsoft Project. Oh, horrible. You might learn a lot about Exchange and how to manage emails. But you're not going to learn anything that is a new skill, like working with people, like challenging yourself, like confronting people about real problems, like having a real problem in the team. I was consulting to one of the banks in Scandinavia. And one of the teams there, I was talking to a team leader, and one of the people in the team complained to her that one of the people in the team, one of the other people in the team, wasn't doing his job. So the other 3 people, they just didn't want to work with that person. Okay? They said that that person is not doing a horrible job. Okay? Now, the team leader didn't know what to do. What do you do in that situation when you have a person that people don't want to work with? What's the challenge? What's the comfort zone there? The comfort zone for a lot of team leaders is to just get rid of that person. Okay? You're not going to learn anything by doing that, and that's not your goal. Your goal is to take the current team that you have and make them the team that they can be. That means that you can work with that person to improve their skills, or you can work with the other people to improve their skills at mentoring other people. But the worst thing you can do is to get rid of the problem instead of facing it. So that's an example of how you might challenge yourself to become much better than you are. And it's quite a scary thing because you're taking a risk as a team leader by keeping someone that people don't like. Okay? And it is a risk because you might lose face, you might get it wrong, and that's okay. Taking risk is one of the ways that we learn. It's one of the best ways, actually. So when I want people to learn new skills, I challenge them to do things that they've never done before or that they feel uncomfortable doing. If I have a person who wants to learn a new framework in the current platform, that's not learning a new skill. If a person comes to me and says, look, I'm a .NET developer and I really want to get into the whole WPF thing. I've always been a UI programmer and I want to go from WinForms to WPF. I hear it's really complicated. This will be my challenge. Because as a team leader, a lot of times I would do like almost homework type assignments where people will have these small projects that get them to a new level of skill. But that doesn't count. Learning a framework. How do I know it doesn't count? Because that person has no problem suggesting that, and they're not afraid of it one bit. Okay? They're not afraid of it. They're not annoyed by it. They're happy to do it. It's in their full comfort zone to learn a new framework. That's not a big deal, and it's not a new skill. What's a new skill? For example, learn how to talk to people in marketing. Work with the QA department if there is a QA department, instead of just working in the UI. If you always worked in the UI, learn how to work in different levels of the application. Something that requires a separate skill. Work with a team of different developers who work completely differently. I challenged myself a couple of years ago to learn Ruby. Now, the easiest way to learn Ruby is to just do it after hours, you know, on your own time. Just every once in a while, read some book and maybe do a little website or something. But you're not going to learn a new skill from that. It's not really a challenge. You're not going to become better just by learning a couple of syntax APIs. Because Ruby is a different culture. So the big difference here is that you want to jump into the culture. So instead of just working in my current job, and I was working at a company called TypeMock at the time, I was the CTO there and everything was great, I chose instead to join as an intern in a Ruby shop. Okay? So I was working there with a bunch of like 5 Russian guys. They're all like mumbling or in a table, just they were all working in Vim. I was going from Visual Studio to Vim. Okay? Everything was command line, working on Macs. I've never worked with a Mac before. That was scary, okay? Because all the ego that I had, that I've accumulated over the years, all that meant nothing to these people. To them, I was an insect. And that's awesome. You always want to be where you feel stupid, because that's how you know you're learning something. You should look at your current situation and say, I'm feeling annoyed right now. I'm feeling like I don't want to be here. Great. Okay, you should have 2 people in your mind that say this. One person is the person who's actually being challenged, says, this sucks, this is really difficult, I hate this. And then there's the other person that says, you're having a problem. It means you're learning something awesome. And I remember working with these people and not being able to just write the first word in Vim. There's a joke, if you want to keep a student busy for 2 hours, make them open Vim and then ask them to close it. And it's true, it's a horrible interface. But now I kind of like Vim, okay? I never thought that I would, but I kind of liked it because I decided to jump all in. So I left my comfort zone and jumped to a place where I felt completely stupid, where there was a risk of losing face. And believe me, I've lost face many times. But it's okay, because now I can look at the .NET world and the Ruby world with the same breath, and I can pick and choose, and I can look at different tools. It's almost like learning regular expressions. It's a horrible thing to learn. Once you know it, you instantly become better at specific situations. You look at the world differently. And that's what I want to do with my team. For each team member, I will look for that, what is their comfort zone, and I will look at how to just like push them off of it. And of course, I would do it with full consent from them. That means that I would explain the whole point of the learning process. And I would ask them if they're committed to learning new things. Because in my team, I only want people who always want to get better and to learn new skills. Okay? So it's kind of a veiled threat, I guess. But I only expect people who want to learn new things, either at their own time or at company time. Now, of course, you might say, okay, Roy, that's great, that's awesome, but we never have time for that. So we have to make time. To be able to challenge people, we have to make time for people to learn something. There's a book called Slack. In that book, the idea of creating time for learning that's the whole point of the book. Learning organizations need time. When you teach your kid to tie their shoelace, do you just show it to them once and then you expect them to do it at 100% the speed that you do it? Or do you let them for a few good weeks just slowly go through the motions until they get it? That's the learning time. So the idea is that when someone learns a new skill, at the beginning, it will take them at least 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 10 times longer to accomplish the same things they used to do before. If you're teaching your team test-driven development and you expect them to come back and be 100% as productive with the code, then you're doing it wrong. Because they're not going to be 100% productive. They will be, but they will just throw away all TDD knowledge they've ever had. Because you're not giving them time to actually exercise what they learned slowly. That's the important thing. Adding 20% doesn't work, just so you know. Everyone, all companies I've ever seen have have just said, oh, send them to the course and then just add 20% to the project for the learning curve. No, you have to add 100% at least for a task, for a couple of sprints. Each task for a couple of sprints actually has to take at least double the amount of time if you want people to even start doing it with test-driven development. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of teams learn TDD but never do it, is because there is no slack time for people to acquire new skills. If I challenge people to acquire new skills, but they don't have time to actually do them, then I'm doing it wrong. So it's my job to make the time. And a lot of the time, most teams do not have any learning time allowed. What is allowed? It means that you always have something more important than actually learning. So you're fixing fires. So instead of just filling up 100% of production order, just fixing fires, that's what I will do. To do that, sometimes I will have to take a risk instead of staying safe. How do you clear up time? You remove some of your current obligations. As a team leader, you will have to take a risk and talk to management that you won't always have, that you won't be able to accomplish everything that you've already said you'll do. You'll have to lose face in front of management. You'll have to explain why it's actually a good thing. Because you're rebooting the team, you're teaching them a whole new set of skills. As a team leader, I experiment when I have the time. But I experiment with everything. With changing people's behaviors, moving them around, changing the software. Not all software is given up to us by God. We can choose to use other software. This is really important. Okay? Just because you're doing Java today doesn't mean you cannot use JRuby tomorrow. Just because you're working with Team System today doesn't mean that you can't work with TeamCity tomorrow. Yes, the company already paid for it. But how much are you paying for it not changing? Everything that you don't change that hurts you has a cost. So what happens with this? We don't have time. Most teams don't. Most team leaders will say, Roy, we don't have time for that crap. I mean, that's all great, and I totally believe what you just said. But seriously, for our team, that's never going to work. Has anyone just said that to themselves? For our team, that's never going to work? Because I said that. That's never going to work when someone said this to me. And it will not work until you realize that teams have different situations where they can learn or they can't learn. To understand this, one of the core principles of a team leader is that your leadership style and how you lead the team has to change based on what the team needs. What does the team need? It's based on the current skill of the team to manage the current reality. If the current reality is that of chaos and the team doesn't have any idea about quality, that's a different leadership style than a team who's already worked together, they're self-organizing, they have different ideas about quality, and they're able to deliver things. There is a different leader for those two different teams, but it should be you. Okay? A team leader who treats a self-organizing team, two people who are actually skilled and have the knowledge to accomplish things on their own, but they treat them like rookies at a boot camp. Have you ever seen a team leader just, I remember it happened, of course, to me, because everything happens to me at some point. A stand-up meeting. And it went like this. The team leader would come in, they would stand like this, like a soldier. So, what did you do yesterday? Well, yesterday I did this. What are you going to do today? Well, today I'm going to do this. Anything stopping you? No, thank you. What did you do yesterday? And this is how it went. Can you imagine a stand-up meeting with a team that is already self-organizing, a team that already knows how to get stuff done? And they're just having to stand there and having a team leader having to ask the questions instead of just telling each other what's really going on. That's almost like a level of bureaucracy, okay? Instead of the team communicating with each other. But some teams need that. Some teams don't. And that's the art of leading teams, is to recognize what times you need to be what type of leader. And this has to do with 3 stages that I think each team passes. And each team continually changes between these three types. Most teams are in what I call the chaos phase. Chaos phase does not mean that there is coffee spilled on the floor, there are people running around, you know. It means that the team doesn't have time to learn. It means that the team's full capacity is taken over by production issues and by production realities. So they never have time to acquire new skills. Okay? You may send them to a TDD course for a couple of days, but they don't have the time to actually practice test-driven development in real life. So as far as I'm concerned, they do not have the time. Another example is a team that always has fires to put out. Yeah, we'd love to do a TDD course, but seriously, we have a release that we had to release 3 months ago, so we're not going to do that. Has anyone here been in a team where you never have time for anything? Okay, just making sure. Most teams are chaotic. Also, most teams try to kind of do agile. Doesn't work together, because to do agile, you have to learn and acquire new skills. If you don't have time to acquire them, it's not going to work. So for anything that you want to try and do, for any question that you ever have about how to solve something at the team level, I have a person who does this, but I would like them to do something else. The first question you should ask yourself is, what stage is my team in? Are we in chaos? Because if we're in chaos, I need to do something different than if we are in learning or self-organizing stage. So chaos is defined by not having any time to learn, no slack time. Learning stage is when you have made time for your team to learn and you're actually using it. That's the learning stage. Some teams are in the learning stage where they're allowed to learn new things. Not officially, but there is time to learn new things. Maybe you just after a release and suddenly you have a bunch of free time to just go crazy. But then instead of creating new skills, everyone just goes and plays with some cool new technology instead of learning new skills. So learning is not just having time, it's also using it. So as a team leader, I need to recognize that we have time to learn, and then I would use that time to actually push people off the edge and say, now's the time we actually get you to a different level of skill. And for each person, it can be a different skill. For each person, there is a different comfort zone. It could be multiple skills. So a team will be in the learning stage until at some point they can solve all their own problems. So in terms of the learning stage, your job as a team leader is to teach people to solve their own problems. And each problem needs a different skill to be able for them to be able to solve it. Okay? If you have the CEO of the company always coming in at the middle of the day and just saying, wouldn't it be cool if we did that? Wouldn't it be cool if we did that? Wouldn't it be cool if we did that? And then you'd see all the developers like running around. We have to change everything. I don't know what to do. That's a skill. How do you handle that? Now, at the beginning, in chaos, you don't have the ability to handle something like that. In chaos, the type of leader that you have to be is a sort of a dictator. A dictator is a leader that basically shields the team. That's the type of leader I used to be. I didn't know that there were other types. That's the difference. Most team leaders think that they're supposed to shield their teams. And in chaos mode, while the team doesn't have time to fix anything and to learn new skills, that is exactly the type of leader you have to be. When the ship is sinking, the captain doesn't call a meeting, the captain gives orders. That's basically what you should think about in chaos. Because your whole point in chaos is to get the hell out of there. Make time for the team to learn so that they can start learning, because the whole point of you being there is that you can teach them to solve their own problems. But you can't do that when you don't have the time. So let's make time. To be able to make time, you need to have control of your team. You need to be a control freak in the chaos phase. Okay? That's perfect for the chaos phase. You shield the team, you say, I'm the only point of contact. Everyone talk only to me from this moment on. I decide what goes in at some point. And that helps. And then you can start removing some of the priorities that you've promised and lose a bit of face so that you will actually have time. From that moment on, you can, after a month or so, when you've fixed most of the fires and removed everything else, you can start re-estimating things with more time so that you will have time to learn. Now, in the learning phase, when you are actually there, you don't want to be the dictator. Because if you tell people what to do, they will never learn how to solve it on their own. So in the learning phase, you become more of a coach slash sometimes commander slash leader, dictator. Because in the learning phase, the whole point of the learning phase is to teach people to solve their own problems. And so what you do is that you start teaching people how to ask the right questions, how to find the right answers without you having to be there. Okay? So for example, someone comes to me with this and says, I wish we had faster machines. One of the things that I can tell that person in the learning stage is, what are you going to do about it? I can help you learn how you can do something about it, but I'm not going to solve the problem for you. I'll get you out of the comfort zone so that you can solve the problem, so that next time you have a slow machine, you can just do something about it. Isn't that awesome? That's a self-organizing team. If they have slow machines, they can do something about it without me. So what's my job? My job is to teach them how to do that. Not my job to solve their problems. But if this was the chaos stage, different behavior. In the chaos stage, someone says, we have slow machines. I would say, don't worry. Stick to your comfort zones. I'll do whatever it takes to get you that fast machine. Because I want people to just get things done as quickly as possible so we can move on to the learning stage. So in the learning stage, I'm a mentor, coach, but only for problems that I actually have time to solve. If at the learning stage, the team has, I tell the team, you decide what source control system you want to work with. And they choose no source control system, that's something that to fix will take more time than we usually have in the learning stage. So that's one place where I would stop and say, no, you're making the wrong decision. We don't have time to fix this. You have to use source control system. So I can put constraints. And I can sometimes decide for the team. But I try to make it as least often as possible. So in the learning stage, I'm more of a coach. At some point, and of course I go through this, there's a whole 2-day course for team leaders that I do about how to get people from point A to point B. But at some point, you're going to see that people have solved their own problems, that they don't need you to run for a week. They just need you for the constraints or maybe the end goal, but nothing else. That's the stage when you can say the team is truly self-organizing, is when they don't need you to just continue with their lives. They just need you to tell them where to go and under what constraints. So, so as a self-organizing team leader, my job is mostly to facilitate discussions and to make sure that the team stays in that zone. However, a team can go back within a day back into chaos. Almost anything can bring a team back into chaos. The project reality has changed. The amount of people in the team have changed. The technology has changed. The requirements have changed. A lot of things can change to make a team at a specific point almost worthless and back into chaos. And so I need to recognize that as a team leader and say, need to change the leadership style again so that we can, again, make learning time possible. Because we're not going to be able to solve this without learning time. So these aren't stages like a child grows. These are zones or comfort zones for a team where each one, the team needs something different from you as a team leader. To be able to recognize that is one of the most essential things that a team leader can do. Because if you're a team leader who has a learning team, but you're treating them as if they're in chaos, you're going to get a very unhappy team, especially if they're self-organizing, not even learning. But if you're treating a chaotic team as if they're self-organizing, you're creating even more chaos. Things are just not going to work. But, you know, Mike Cohn told me that I should just do this. So as a Scrum Master, I suggested that they use a source control system, but they chose not to. So I tried, right? The best thing as a team leader you can say is, I tried. Nope. You get paid to change the world. You get paid to change the reality so that these people will become better. And if you see them making awful mistakes, you have to take charge and do something about it. Because ultimately, it's your job to make sure that these people know what they're doing, that they have the skills necessary to finish what they need to do. And there's a chaos addiction happening here. A lot of teams stay in chaos because they're in chaos. Sounds weird, But basically, in chaos, let's say that you decide to fix a feature, so you can fix it with tests or without tests. Has anyone ever had this dilemma? Fix it with test or without test? Anyone? Okay, that's good. How many people here chose to fix it with tests? I'm sorry for you. For all the other people, I mean. And the reason is, a lot of people choose not to do it with tests because they say, what's the quickest fix right now? Because they don't realize they're in chaos, so they just want to fix the fire. They don't realize that fixing the fire is going to just continue the situation. So they fix the fire, and for a while everything's great. It actually solved their problem. So if it solved their problem, next time this happens, they have the dilemma. Fix it with or without a test. Well, last time I fixed it without a test and everything was great. So obviously this is the best solution. So they choose the same solution again. And an addiction is when you think that there is no better choice. Okay? So you continue to do the same thing. One of your roles as a team leader is to break that addiction cycle and realize you're in chaos and realize that the only way you're getting out of there is if you actually make the time and you remove some of the commitments. Otherwise, you're always going to have this dilemma, and you're never going to have time to do anything else but fix the fires. You're actually going to have to take a stand. Now, that's going to be scary, but that's the point, because if you're scared, it means you're learning something, remember? So, as a team leader, if my team is all comfortable and having fun and just totally in their comfort zone, I will usually feel like I'm doing something a bit wrong, because I'm not challenging them to the next thing that they could have learned, the next new skill. So that's the commander, coach, and facilitator. 3 types of leadership for 3 types of zones where the team can actually appear. So to achieve this goal, we have to learn human interaction. That's the 3rd phase. To be able to do human interaction, we have to realize we don't just work with machines, we don't treat people just as resources. Several things we can do. We have to realize that our core practice as team leaders is leading people, not machines. That means that if I see a software problem, I treat it as a people problem. There's a saying, every problem in software is actually a people problem, and it's true. You see a piece of bad code, instead of just fixing it, try to understand how did someone come to create such a piece of bad code. What can I fix? What skill can I instill in the team so that I won't have to fix it anymore and I won't have to tell people that there's a problem, that they will find it out on their own. Fix it at the people level. There are a whole bunch of things that we can do, like learning influence patterns as well. We have to spend more time with our team. If most teams are chaotic, most team leaders are unfortunately out and away from the team. A lot of team leaders spend a lot of their time, if not all of it, in meetings all day. So imagine a chaotic team trying to just go ahead with their day and fix fires, but they don't have the skills to fix their own problems. So whenever they face a problem, they're stuck. They're waiting for you. And where are you? You're in a meeting. In chaos, you have to be at least 50% of the time with your team. Now, in learning, you have to be at least 50% of the time with your team to coach, to mentor. In a self-organizing team, you have to be there 50% to facilitate, to make sure that the team doesn't go back to different zones as well. 50% of your time should be with your team no matter what. It can be either to mentor, to teach, to consolidate the knowledge, and it could also be to navigate the ship if you're in chaos. But you still have to be there. If you're not there, you're always going to stay there in chaos. So as team leaders, we have to learn people skills. We have to learn how to confront people. One of the biggest fears of team leaders is to confront someone about something that actually hurts the team. I remember the first time I had to do it. It was scary as hell. It was a person in the team who was such a slow typist that it was really hard to work with him. And I remember being really afraid of talking to that person because he was my friend. I didn't want to lose his friendship. I thought that if I talked to him about it, he would want to quit. And then what type of team leader makes a team member quit? It's a horrible thing. So I was really afraid to do it. My mentor at the time, and I was lucky to have one, said, just go ahead, tell that person what you just told me. Do it nicely. So I started out by actually I mean, I remember just walking to the office for the one-on-one meeting with that person. And I remember just trembling, my hands trembling, because I was so afraid of doing this. I wasn't happy about doing this. I wasn't telling myself, you're going to learn something. I was simply terrified of doing this. But I had to do it, because that problem was big enough to do something about. And when I spoke to that person, I started out by asking, how are things at home? Everything great? Because maybe that person has an issue. Maybe the reason he's working slowly is because something happened. And everything was great. He wasn't even aware of the problem. So I said, what if I told you you could type 5 times faster than you could? Would you be interested in doing that? What do you think he said? He said, awesome. Yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. What developer doesn't want to get better at their craft, right? So we set out to create a learning program where we got a software to teach blind typing. And we met every week to see how things are progressing. It wasn't as a test. It wasn't like the person would be fired if he wasn't fast enough. It was more like a coach, someone to talk about it with. It was totally personal, without the team. It was just a personal skill of that person, how to be better at the team level. Do you know how much, not only that person learned, but how much I learned just from that? It was just one of the biggest learning opportunities. Okay, well, one of the biggest learning opportunities for me. Just imagine how scary it is, and then imagine yourself doing it and how much you're going to learn from it. Remember, that's what you get paid to do. That's why you get paid, is to actually talk to people, to actually change the situation. You have to learn influence patterns, anti-patterns in how people behave, communication techniques, congruence. The idea that when you talk, you think about 3 different things, not just what that person is doing, but also about yourself. Why do you feel that way about what that person is doing? Have you ever found yourself saying, that person is doing that to me on purpose? He's hurting the project on purpose. He is trying to hurt the project. If you've ever told yourself a story about a person, remember that the reason you're telling yourself a story about a person is so that you don't feel compelled to talk to them personally. That's an example of congruence. Realizing that you have as much to do with the point you're making, not just the other person. Maybe you're the one with the problem, and that person is doing great. And the third type is the context. The third thing to think about, congruence. So this whole idea of understanding the environment and why things happen and the whole system behind them. Understanding that for any behavior that you see at the workplace, the world is perfectly designed for that behavior to happen. If you see a person not doing test-driven development when everyone else is, the world is perfectly designed around that person for that behavior to happen. It's your job to be Sherlock Holmes and to understand what influences that behavior and to change that. It's not just motive. It's not just personal. Maybe the person wants to, but there's something else. And again, there's a whole talk about influence patterns that I'll be happy to do at one of the user groups at some point. And so we end up with a manifesto. We believe that great teams are grown, not hired. That our goal is to continuously grow people into self-organization. Because happier developers make happier customers, happier employers. So we need to challenge ourselves in our team. We need to change our leadership style. And we need to participate in human interaction. That is our decision. That is our goal. That is our ethical responsibility as team leaders. Now, there are 2 books that I'm actually writing right now. One is called Elastic Leadership, and it's all about changing the leadership style and driving people into self-organization. And another is called Notes to Software Team Leader, which I'm not really writing, but a lot of other different people are writing, and each one of them is usually a really well-known person, but it also has people that are not well-known. It's a book by team leaders for team leaders. And it basically contains things that you wish you knew on your first day as a team leader. And most specifically, I'm looking for more notes. So if you want to contribute a note, I accept notes for anyone. It could be that you're just a team member who would love to tell a team leader what not to do. That's great. Okay, if you want someone to read your note, go ahead to that page, and you can submit the note right now if you want. And I look at all of them, and most of them actually just get in, because it's important for a team leader to view all the different ideas that people have about team leadership. Okay, now, what we're going to do is something a little bit different. I'm going to do a little song, actually, that I wrote. But for the song, I'm going to need a volunteer. Someone who wants a free copy of one of my books. Anyone? You don't have to sing, by the way. You just have to press space. Anyone? Sir, come in. What's your name? Dimitri. Please give your hand a warm welcome for Dimitri. Okay. You don't have to bring your bag, actually. Nice to meet you. Please stand there right by the computer. Don't touch anything yet. It's really important. You could ruin the whole thing, and it's going to be your fault. And it's all on video. Okay. Now, Dimitri, first of all, I'm going to teach you a new skill. I'm going to teach you how to make the lines go by as I sing them, okay? Are you ready? Okay, so every time I finish singing the line written, I want you to press space. Is that okay? Okay. I hope my voice doesn't give out. This is a test line. It looks like you're doing just fine. It's time for a song of mine. Perfect. Okay. Don't touch anything until I nod my head, okay? So, this song is about a friend of mine. He was a scrum master in a team, but he was a really bad one. So at some point, he actually got thrown off the team. So this is the song that he would have written if he had any kind of musical skills. Don't do anything yet. I know that I've been so harsh, that I've had some fights, that you've had enough. That's why I'm Scrum Master no more. That's why you're doing sprints while I'm home watching porn. I heard the new Scrum Master is great. I hope he makes you do things that you really hate. When your project fails, you'll think of me, but for now, never mind, I'll find some other new team. What you did, it wasn't really Scrum, was really just a scream team. You were never so effective, that's why I was screaming at retrospectives. Sometimes your team is great, and sometimes you wish it's a dream. Sometimes your team is great, and sometimes you think it's a dream. There were times when I thought of quitting, then I just remembered that my pay's increasing. I was once just a team member like you, but then they made me the master, so what else could I do? Yes, there were meetings. Yes, there were meetings when I was doubting that I'm doing it wrong, when I was shouting, but it's totally your fault that this happened, so for now, never mind, I'll find some other new team. What you did wasn't really Scrum, was more like a scream team. You were never so effective, that's why I was screaming at retrospectives. Sometimes your team is great, and sometimes you wish it's a dream. Sometimes your team is great, and sometimes you wish it's a dream. Thank you. Dimitri, thank you. Give me your email address and I'll give you the book. Okay? Thank you all. I hope to see you at some other time. Bye-bye.